My daughter's birthday cake had "Congratulations to the favorite granddaughter" with her cousin's name. My wife's mom called it a mistake, but I had seen the order form and knew it was malice. My little girl was 7, crying. My 11-year-old son picked up his phone, showed them all. The video he played silenced the room. For 7 years, I, Oliver Coleman, had lived in this state of quiet, grinding conflict. I was a machinist, used to working with absolute precision. My life with Deborah and the kids, Isaac, my analytical boy, and Emma, my tender-hearted girl, was the machine I valued most. But Martha Fry, Deborah's mother, was a piece of grit in the gears, slowly tearing everything down. I had learned on that Martha kept a ledger. Every slight, real or imagined, went into her mental accounting, and she collected compound interest. She had disapproved of my marrying Deborah. I was a mechanic's son, a small business owner, which to her was barely a step above working with my hands. She wanted a corporate lawyer or a pharmaceutical salesman, someone who fit the image of status she demanded. What I had not fully grasped until recently was that my children were also being tallied, weighed, and consistently found wanting. It wasn't about anything they had done, it was simply because they were as is mine. The realization hadn't come as a thunderbolt, but as an accumulation of small, sharp moments. The Christmas 7-year-old Emma's presents from Grandma Martha and Grandpa Vernon were clearance items, still bearing price tags, while her cousin Vivian, who was 10, received a $300 American Girl doll and a miniature horse stable. Martha's hands had been steady and her smile warm as she handed out the disparate gifts. There were the family dinners where Isaac's academic achievements, his self-built computer, his advanced coding aptitude, earned polite nods, but his cousin Vivian's participation trophy from a short dance recital demanded champagne toasts and center table discussion. My kids were relegated to the margins, literally and figuratively. The photographs on Martha's mantle showed Vivian, polished and smiling, commanding center frame in individual portraits with professional lighting. Isaac and Emma appeared in the back corner of group shots, slightly out of focus. I had documented none of it. My father, Albert Coleman, a retired auto worker who raised my brother and me, taught me a powerful philosophy. Control what you can, ignore what you can't, and never let them see you bleed. Real men didn't whine about hurt feelings. That stoicism was my armor, and it was quickly becoming my cage. So, I smiled at family gatherings. I swallowed the observations, the anger, the sharp ache in my chest when I saw Emma look from her clearance gift to Vivian's pristine toy. I focused on my machine shop, Coleman Precision Machining, building the life I could control, the one that generated a good, stable income, contrary to Martha's assumptions. Deborah, my wife, worked as a medical transcriptionist from home. She was beautiful, with her mother's sharp cheekbones, but she had a rebellious streak that had drawn me years ago when we met in a community college welding course. That rebellion, however, had limits. She still desperately craved her mother's approval, and that was the crack in our foundation. When I had tried raising concerns over the years, the birthday money discrepancies, the vacation invitation that excluded my family, the constant comparisons, the script was always the same. Deborah would sigh, say her parents were just old-fashioned, or set in their ways, promise to talk to them, and then nothing would change. Eventually, I had stopped bringing it up. The fights were not worth it, and I had foolishly convinced myself that if I ignored the inequality, my kids wouldn't notice the hurt. I had been terribly wrong about that too. My 11-year-old son, Isaac, had noticed everything. But unlike me, he hadn't internalized the shame. He had externalized the pain, turning it into objective, quantifiable data. He was quietly building a case, meticulously collecting the painful evidence that I, the adult, was too conflict-averse to face. Isaac was about to teach his father what true protection looked like. The mounting resentment and the desperate need to protect Emma were about to collide with Isaac's undeniable truth. Oliver continued to focus on work, pouring his meticulous energy into the precision machining of aerospace components, but the silence he usually maintained was being broken by an unexpected source: his son. Isaac, my 11-year-old, had inherited my mechanical aptitude. Applying it to digital systems, he was fluent in code, building his own computer, and treating digital documentation with a reverence I usually reserved for micrometer readings. He was quiet like me, but where I had cultivated avoidance, he had cultivated observation. 3 months before Emma's 7th birthday, I noticed Isaac carried his phone everywhere during family visits. At first, I dismissed it as typical pre-teen attachment. But one evening, I found him hunched over his laptop in the garage, headphones on, slept, the screen partially hidden by the lip of the hood of my vintage Chevelle. "What are you working on, buddy?" I asked, leaning against the toolbox. Isaac minimized the window instantly, a reaction that was too quick, too guarded. Before the screen vanished, I caught a glimpse of video editing software and a complex-looking timeline. "Just a project for school," he said, his voice flat. I didn't push. I had learned that forcing Isaac rarely worked. He talked when he was ready, usually when his hands were busy on a shared project. So, I waited, and I watched him more closely during the next few family gatherings, noticing the small, almost imperceptible way he would position his phone in his front pocket or on a nearby counter, always angled toward Martha or Vernon. 2 weeks later, the opportunity came. We were rebuilding the carburetor on the Chevelle, the heavy scent of gasoline and oil filling the garage. It was a comfortable, silent rhythm of father and son working together, the kind of control I excelled at. Isaac's hands stilled over the gasket. "Dad," he said, his voice matter of fact, betraying no emotion, "do you think Grandma Martha actually loves us?" The question was a direct hit. My hands froze on the wrench. I wanted to deny it, to dismiss it, but the question was too precise for a simple lie. "Why would you ask that?" I managed. "I've been keeping track," Isaac replied. It sounded clinical, like a report. "In the last year, she's called Vivian 17 times. She's called to talk to me, or Emma twice, and both times, she actually wanted to talk to Mom about Mom's work schedule." I swallowed. The tightness I was used to feeling now a sudden, sharp ache. "Maybe she's just closer to Christy, Isaac. That's Mom's sister." "I looked at Mom's old photo albums," Isaac said, ignoring my feeble explanation. "Before Vivian was born, Grandma called Mom all the time. There are pictures of you and Mom at their house every weekend. Then, Aunt Christy got pregnant, and the pictures change. We start appearing less. By the time Emma was born, we're barely in any of them." He presented the data, waiting for me to validate or refute it with better evidence. I had none. I wanted to offer an explanation, a defense of Martha, but the truth stood there, backed by months of observation, in the greasy hands of my 11-year-old son. "People change, Isaac," I said, weakly. "Families are complicated." Isaac shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture that showed he found my response wanting. He wasn't hurt. He was presenting a thesis. "I'm documenting it now," he said, returning his attention to the carburetor. Just in case. In case of what? I asked, my voice strained. Isaac gave me a look that spoke volumes. It was the cold calculation of someone who knew the real answer, but understood the need for plausible deniability. In case we need proof someday. The conversation unsettled me deeply. It validated every suppressed feeling. Yet the realization that my son was carrying this heavy burden terrified me. He had become the sentinel I failed to be. He had done what I, the adult, was too conflict averse to do. He had given shape and form to the abuse. The problem was no longer just a feeling, it was a spreadsheet. I let the subject drop, unable to process the shift, but the truth, backed by data, now lodged itself immovably in my mind. Waiting for the next inevitable trigger. My peaceful denial was officially over. With Isaac's data now, a constant weight, a truth I couldn't unsee, I approached Emma's 7th birthday with heightened vigilance. Every detail felt heavy with consequence. Emma, my daughter, had requested a small party. Just a few friends and family, and a chocolate cake with purple frosting. Her favorite color that month. I had offered to bake it myself. I was decent at baking, finding an unexpected peace in the precision of measurements and temperatures. But Deborah had insisted her mother handle it. She feels bad about missing Emma's recital last month, Deborah had said, placing her hand on my arm, trying to soothe the tension she could sense, if not fully understand. Let her do this. It's her way of making up for it. I had agreed, though I'd noted that Martha had missed Emma's recital because she'd been attending Vivian's, which had been scheduled for the same time. When I pointed out that Martha could have attended ours since Cresty, and Les would be at Vivian's anyway, Deborah had looked at me like I was being deliberately difficult. She could choose our daughter for once, I said, the words slipping out with a quiet fury. Don't start, Deborah had pleaded. Please, it's just a recital. But it wasn't just a recital. It was never just one thing. It was 1,000 small, calculated cuts. And I was starting to realize that Deborah had been expertly trained not to feel them, or at least, to prioritize Martha's comfort over her children's feelings. The morning of Emma's birthday, a Saturday in late September, I woke early. I couldn't settle. The awareness Isaac had given me was a constant, low-level dread. I drove downtown to the bakery, where Martha had supposedly placed the order. Classic Cakes was a small storefront, family, owned for 3 generations, known for quality and, more importantly, accuracy. I called ahead to confirm they were open, pulled my truck into an alley behind the shop, and walked in. The owner, a woman in her 60s with flour, dusted hands and sharp, knowing eyes, greeted me at the counter. "Help you with something?" she asked. "I'm Oliver Coleman. My mother-in-law, Martha Fry, ordered a birthday cake for pickup this afternoon. I just wanted to confirm the details." She consulted her computer, frowning slightly. "Fry. Yes, here it is. Pickup at 2 o'clock. Chocolate cake, purple frosting." She paused, then read the message aloud. Message reads, "Congratulations to the favorite granddaughter, Vivian." The words hit me like a solid block of ice. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate, calculated strike. My hands gripped the edge of the counter. "Could I see the order form?" I asked, keeping my voice level, machinist, precise. "Just want to make sure everything's correct." Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by a flicker of anger that was not directed at me. She printed the form and slid it across the counter. There, in Martha's distinctive, formal handwriting, was the exact message the baker had read. Below it, in the notes section, were 2 chilling lines. Please make this extra special. Vivian deserves the best. That intention, written down, was the final proof. I pulled out my phone. I didn't need to read it again. The words were burned into my mind, the confirmation that this was not oversight or forgetfulness, but calculated malice. I photographed the order form, capturing Martha's handwriting and the bakery's timestamp. I looked up at the owner. This cake is supposed to be for my daughter, Emma. It's her 7th birthday. I'm so sorry, the woman said, shaking her head. We can make a correction. I can scrape the message. No, I interrupted, my mind already working through the implications. I needed evidence. I needed the planned betrayal to be fully executed. Make it exactly as ordered. I pulled out my wallet. I'll pay extra for a rush order on a second cake. Chocolate with purple frosting. Simple. Messagey, happy birthday. Emma, can you have both ready by 2? Of course, she said, her face hardening with sympathy and rage. No charge for the second cake. I insist on paying, I countered, sliding cash across the counter for both cakes, plus a generous rush fee. Sir, she said, her sharp eyes meeting mine. I've been doing this 30 years. I know deliberate cruelty when I see it. The second cake is on the house, but I'll take the rush payment for the first one. I drove home with my jaw clenched tight enough to ache. I had always suspected the depth of Martha's malice, but seeing it documented, seeing her intention to publicly humiliate my daughter on her birthday, snapped something inside me. The years of quiet avoidance were over. I was going to force the confrontation I had spent my life running from. I found Deborah in the kitchen wrapping presents. A cheerful ribbon of normalcy she was desperately trying to maintain. Emma was watching cartoons in the living room. Morning, Deborah said, not looking up. Mom called. She'll be here around 1:30 to help set up. Great, I said, pouring coffee, my hands steady despite the anger burning in my chest. I couldn't tell her yet. She would try to stop me, try to make excuses for her mother, try to preserve the peace I was about to shatter. I need to run back out this afternoon, I said. Should be back before guests arrive. For what? She glanced up, suspicious of my calm tone. You're being weird. Just an errand, I said, meeting her gaze. Just want everything perfect for Emma. The confrontation was no longer a vague possibility. It was a guaranteed event, timed precisely for maximum impact. I had the physical evidence, and I had the resolve. I knew I was choosing war over peace, but my daughter's tears, which I could already imagine, were a higher cost than any fight. The doorbell rang at 1:15, shattering the tense silence in our home. Oliver went to the door, his heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. Martha and Vernon arrived carrying decorations and wearing matching expressions of practiced, benevolent grandparental duty. Christy, Deborah's younger sister, and her husband Les, along with Vivian, followed 15 minutes later. Vivian, 10 years old and polished like a trophy, immediately claimed Emma's attention, talking exclusively about her upcoming birthday party in November. A theme park rental, no expense spared. I watched Emma's the house fall, as she compared her modest living room gathering to Vivian's promised extravaganza. I watched Martha pat Vivian's head affectionately while barely acknowledging Emma's excited chatter about turning 7. And I watched Deborah fail to notice any of it, too busy arranging chairs and checking the time, lost in her determined effort to make the day feel normal. But I also watched Isaac. He stood in the corner of the living room, near the entertainment center, his phone held loosely in his hand, recording everything. His gaze was calm, almost professional, and in his eyes, I saw not hurt, but cold preparation. At 2 o'clock, I announced I was picking up the cake. Vernon offered to join me. "Man's work, right?" he said, attempting a joke that fell flat. I declined, maintaining my calm facade. I drove to Classic Cakes, retrieved both boxes, and returned home. The small party was already in full swing. Emma's best friend, a quiet girl named Sophie, had arrived with her parents, who were now gathered politely with the rest of the family. My hands did not shake as I carried in the first cake box. Emma bounced with excitement, her purple dress twirling. "Can I see it, Daddy? Can I see it?" Her anticipation was agonizing to watch. I set the box on the dining room table and opened it carefully. The cake was beautiful, professional, and elegant, with delicate purple roses along the edges. In the center, in perfect cursive script, was the message. My daughter's birthday cake had "Congratulations to the favorite granddaughter," with her cousin's name. My wife's mom said, "Oh, honey, the bakery made a mistake. My little girl was 7, crying." My 11-year-old son picked up his phone, showed them all. The video he played made the room go silent. The silence that followed the reading of that inscription was absolute. Emma's face crumpled as she sounded out the words. Her reading skills were just good enough to grasp the profound betrayal. Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and immediate. Martha's voice cut through the quiet, syrupy with false concern, the performance kicking into high gear. "Oh, honey, the bakery made a mistake. These things happen." She turned, ready to placate, ready to explain it away. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest, an absence of the fear that had plagued me for years. I turned to look at my mother-in-law, meeting her gaze. She held mine without apology. In that brief, chilling moment, I saw it clearly. She knew exactly what she had done, and she expected me to be the good, quiet son-in-law who would let it slide, protecting her reputation over my daughter's heart. Before I could utter a word of the righteous fury boiling in my throat, Isaac stepped forward. He stood beside the television, holding his phone. "It wasn't a mistake, Grandma," he said, his voice level, almost conversational. All eyes turned to my 11-year-old son. Martha's expression flickered. A momentary confusion before she resettled into her practiced grandmotherly confusion. "What do you mean, dear?" "I mean, you did it on purpose," Isaac countered. "Just like you do everything on purpose." "Dad, can I show them?" I nodded slowly, unable to look away from Martha's now rigid face. This was it. The confrontation I had avoided for years was being led by my son. Isaac connected his phone to the television screen. We'd set the wireless connection up months ago for family movie nights. He pressed play. The video began with a date stamp from 6 days earlier. The camera angle was low and awkward, clearly captured from a pocket or a counter. But the audio was clear. It was Martha, speaking with the bakery owner, who was now one of the silent witnesses in our living room. Martha's voice came through the speakers. "I wanted to say congratulations to the favorite granddaughter, Vivian. Make it elegant. She deserves the best." The bakery owner's voice was audible. "Ma'am, whose birthday is this for?" "Martha. My granddaughter's 7th birthday party, and her name is Vivian." A short, deliberate pause. "The cake is for what matters. Some children understand they're special. Others need to learn their place." The video cut. It jumped to another clip, this one 3 months earlier. Martha and Vernon were in their living room, unaware of Isaac's phone recording from the kitchen counter where he'd left it while getting water. Vernon's voice, rough and dismissive. "I don't understand why Deborah stays with him. He's got no ambition, no class. Martha, she made her choice. But I'll be damned if I let those children think they're on the same level as Vivian. Someone has to teach them reality." Bit harsh, don't you think? Vernon chuckled. "Martha, children need structure. Christy married well. Deborah married beneath her. Their children need to understand the difference." The video compilation continued. 5 minutes of carefully curated, damning evidence. Martha making snide comments about my income, about Emma's average appearance, about Isaac being too serious and probably on the spectrum. Vernon laughing about how I was barely a step up from a mechanic. And in each clip, the casual unchecked cruelty of people who believed they were unobserved and untouchable. The final clip showed Martha on the phone 2 days prior, her voice dripping with practiced sincerity to an unknown person. "Of course, I love both my granddaughters equally. But between you and me, Carol, blood tells. Oliver Coleman has nothing to offer those children except his mediocrity. Thank God they have Deborah's genes to balance it out." The casual cruelty was staggering. The video ended. The television screen went black. The silence was heavier than before. Emma had stopped crying and was staring at the screen, too young to process the words fully, but old enough to understand the tone. Sophie's parents were pale, deeply uncomfortable. Les was already checking his phone, focused on escaping. Christy recovered first. "Isaac, that's incredibly inappropriate. You can't just record people without their consent. One-party consent state." Isaac interrupted, his voice still calm and factual. "I'm allowed to record conversations I'm part of, or that occur in my presence." I checked. My eyes went to my wife. Deborah sat frozen, slept, her face ashen, staring at the blank screen like it might offer an explanation that wouldn't shatter her entire understanding of her family. Martha began to speak, her voice shifting to the injured matriarch. "Deborah, you can't possibly believe." The sound that escaped my throat was low and final. "Get out. Get out." The words came from Oliver. Low and final, cutting through Martha's half-formed denial. "Excuse me." Martha's voice was high with indignation, the mask of the wounded matriarch beginning to crack. I turned to face Martha fully, and something in my expression, the complete absence of the fear and deference she was used to, made her take a defensive step back. I said, "Get out. You are not welcome in my home. You are not welcome around my children. Take your husband, your daughter, your son-in-law, and your granddaughter, and get out of my house." Vernon stood up, puffing up his chest. "Now you listen here," he demanded. "No." My voice cut through the room like a blade. "You listen. For 7 years, I've watched you treat my children like they're defective. Because they're mine. I've watched you poison every family gathering with your comparisons and your favorites. I watched my daughter cry herself to sleep, wondering why grandma doesn't love her like she loves Vivian. And I've said nothing. Because I thought, stupidly, that keeping peace was more important than protecting my kids. I was wrong, but now, the peace is gone, and my resolve is not. I moved to stand beside Isaac, placing a heavy, protective hand on my son's shoulder. But my 11-year-old son is braver than I've been. He saw what was happening, and he documented it, and he's showing me that sometimes keeping evidence is more important than keeping peace. Martha's mask had shattered completely, revealing the cold calculation beneath. You ungrateful. We've done everything for this family. You've done everything, us to this family. I corrected, my voice deadly quiet. And it ends now. I want you out. If you are not gone in 60 seconds, I am calling the police and filing a trespassing complaint. Deborah. Are you going to let him speak to your mother this way? Martha's voice was suddenly shrill, desperate. All eyes turned to my wife, who sat motionless, her face streaked with tears, staring at the blank television screen. She sat frozen for a long moment, the weight of a lifetime of gaslighting warring with the objective truth she had just witnessed. Then, slowly, Deborah stood. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled. You called my children mediocre. You said my daughter was average. You've been deliberately hurting them for years. Deborah, honey, you're being emotional. Martha began, attempting her final manipulation. Get out. The scream came from Deborah, raw and furious, a sound that finally released decades of suppressed rage. Get out of my house! Get away from my children! Get out! The Frys and Dodsons left in a hurried, angry flurry of grabbing coats, slammed doors, and muttered threats about lawyers and family loyalty. The house fell silent, except for Emma's quiet, exhausted sniffling. Sophie and her parents excused themselves quickly, their faces pale with shock. I knelt beside my daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. Emma, sweetheart, I am so sorry. That cake was wrong, and what Grandma did was wrong, and none of it is your fault. Why doesn't she love me? The question broke something in my chest, a release of the tension I had carried for years. Because she's broken inside, baby girl. Some people are. But you have people who love you exactly right. Me Mom, Isaac, Grandpa Albert, your friends. We see how special you are. I wanted purple cake. Emma whispered. I know you did. And you know what? I've got a surprise. I retrieved the second box from my truck. When I opened it, Emma's face transformed. The replacement cake was identical to the first, professional and beautiful, except for the messagey happy birthday. Emma. Our favorite girl. As we sang happy birthday, and Emma blew out her candles, I felt Deborah lean against my shoulder. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice thick. I should have seen it. I should have believed you. We see it now, I replied, squeezing her hand. That's what matters. Later, after the guests left and the kids were occupied, Deborah came into my home office. Still in her pajamas, though. It was nearly noon. She hadn't slept well. I had heard her crying in the bathroom at 3 o'clock in the morning. I called my mom this morning, she said, avoiding my eyes. I waited, pouring myself a fresh cup of coffee. She denied everything. Deborah continued, her voice cracking. Said Isaac manipulated the videos, that you turned the kids against her. That I'm being controlled by you. She actually used the word controlled, like I'm not capable of seeing what's right in front of me. What did you say? I told her. I watched my mother order a cake that would humiliate my daughter. I told her her call my children mediocre. I told her. Deborah finally looked at me, her eyes red, rimmed but clear. I told her she was dead to me, until she gets professional help and makes a real apology. Not a sorry you were offended apology. A real one. That must have been hard. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Oliver. She actually laughed and said, I'd come crawling back within a week, because I need her too much. What kind of mother says that? The kind who's been manipulating you your whole life. I reached for her hand. I keep thinking about all the times I dismissed you. All the times you tried to tell me something was wrong, and I made excuses for her. I gaslit you. I helped her hurt our kids. Deb. No. Let me say this. She insisted. I was trained to accept her behavior as normal. To believe that keeping her happy was more important than protecting my own children. I'm going to find a therapist, a good one, because I need to understand how I let this happen. We both let it happen. You tried to stop it. I shut you down. I opened my laptop, showing her the spreadsheet Isaac had created. But I need to tell you something. I'm not going to just move on from this. What do you mean? I mean, your mother deliberately traumatized our daughter. She's been emotionally abusing our children for years, and she laughed when you confronted her. Our son documented all of this because he knew we'd need evidence someday. He was building a case. And I'm going to use it. Martha built her identity on being the pillar of the community. I'm going to prove her wrong. Deborah was quiet for a long moment. Then her jaw set with a determination I recognized from our earliest days. My family just told me my children are mediocre and I'm being controlled by my husband. That's not family, Oliver. That's abuse with a holiday newsletter. I'm with you. Whatever you need. Those people don't get to hurt my children anymore. The trauma was still fresh, but the toxic source had been violently severed. The family was intact, aligned, and ready for the next phase. With their home finally safe, Oliver and Deborah realized their peace was only temporary, unless Martha's public power was neutralized. The time for quiet defense was over. The time for methodical, strategic offense had begun. Oliver's first call was to his lawyer, Sam Peterson, who had handled the formation of Coleman Precision Machining. Sam listened, reviewed the videos Isaac had sent over, and delivered his professional assessment. You've got clear evidence of emotional abuse and deliberate infliction of emotional distress, Sam said. In a custody case, this would be devastating. But against grandparents, without proof of physical harm, your legal aids are limited to a likely difficult to obtain restraining order. What if I'm not interested in legal remedies? Oliver asked. Then I didn't hear that. Sam replied, the implication clear. But hypothetically, if someone were to share documented evidence of a former school principal's abusive behavior, and I stress, documented facts, with her former school district, or with the community organizations she's involved with, or her church leadership, that's just exercising free speech rights, isn't it? Oliver smiled, a thin, cold expression. Hypothetically, and if that person were very careful about only sharing verified, documented facts without embellishment or defamatory statements, they'd be on solid legal ground. The truth, Sam affirmed, is an absolute defense against defamation. If what you're sharing is demonstrably true, the consequences fall on the person who did the things, not the person who exposed them. Next, Oliver called his father, Albert Coleman. Albert answered quickly. Wondered when I'd hear from you. Emma told me about the cake incident when I called for her birthday. Oliver laid out the situation, the videos, the confrontation, and his growing plan to dismantle Martha's reputation. Albert listened, silent and unwavering, until Oliver finished. So, you're going scorched earth, Albert concluded. Is that wrong? Wrong, son. You should have done it years ago, Albert stated simply. I kept my mouth shut because Deborah is your wife and you needed to work it out together. But I've watched those people treat my grandkids like second-class citizens for 7 years. The question isn't whether you should do it. It's whether you're ready for the fallout. They'll fight dirty. I'm prepared for that. Oliver thought about Emma's tears. Good. Then do it right. Document everything. Stay factual. Don't get emotional. And remember, the goal isn't to make yourself feel better. The goal is to protect your kids and make damn sure Martha can't hurt anyone else's grandchildren the same way. That evening, Oliver found Isaac in his room, surrounded by monitors and coding textbooks. Hey, can we talk? Isaac looked up, instantly wary. If this is about the videos, I'm not sorry. Someone had to. I'm not mad. I'm grateful, Oliver said, sitting on the edge of the bed. What you did took guts and skill. Where did you learn all that? YouTube, mostly. And some forums about digital evidence collection. Isaac's expression was guarded. Are you mad that I've been recording them? No. I'm mad that you felt like you had to. Oliver gestured at the setup. This must have taken months. 7 months and 12 days. Isaac corrected, pulling up the spreadsheet. Since Christmas. When Grandma gave Emma that broken doll, but gave Vivian a brand new one that cost $300. Emma cried in her room that night. I started recording the next family dinner. Just in case. He showed Oliver the data visualization he had created, complete with color-coded interactions. Positive, neutral, or negative. The disparity is statistically significant, Isaac explained. I wanted proof that would hold up. Emotional stuff can be subjective. Math isn't. Oliver felt an overwhelming surge of pride and concern. We are going to use it, he told his son. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. Your grandmother will say terrible things about us. It's going to be hard. Harder than watching Emma cry herself to sleep. Isaac asked, his voice sharp. Harder than pretending I don't hear the things they say about you. About us. No. Oliver admitted. Not harder than that. Then I'm in, Isaac said. Whatever you need. Oliver pulled his son into a hug, feeling the tension in Isaac's shoulders ease. He had not just documented the abuse, he had validated his father's transition from avoidance to protector. Over the next 2 weeks, Oliver built his case with the same precision he applied to machining parts. Every claim would be supported by Isaac's evidence or independently verifiable facts. He started with Martha's former employer, Evergreen Elementary. Calls to parents whose children had been there during Martha's tenure yielded disturbing stories. One mother described how Martha had publicly humiliated her dyslexic son, calling him lazy in front of his class. Another parent recounted Martha blocking her daughter's gifted placement because the girl came from a single-parent household. Oliver secured permissions to share the stories, compiling them into a comprehensive dossier. Cross-reference with public information to establish a pattern of systematic bias and cruelty spanning 2 decades. His second target was Martha's church. Slept. He reached out to families he knew who attended, learning that Martha's generous donations came with strict conditions. Only children from stable, traditional families could benefit from certain programs, effectively excluding children of divorced or single parents. Oliver documented the church meeting minutes and testimony, building a picture of conditional charity and abuse of donor influence. The final piece was her social circle. Oliver learned that Martha was feared, not loved, by the women in her garden club and charity league. He knew destroying her reputation in this arena would hurt her most deeply. The campaign was methodical, prepared, and ready for deployment. The goal was to force the issue at Martha's next major public appearance. Oliver secured the final piece of the puzzle, a brief presentation slot at the Evergreen Elementary annual fundraiser, scheduled for mid-November. The irony of using the institution Martha had warped to be the vehicle for her downfall was not lost on him. He and Deborah arrived early, both dressed conservatively, carrying the weight of the coming confrontation. Martha, however, was already holding court. She arrived in a shimmering gown, Vernon at her side, working the room like a politician, dispensing air kisses and accepting compliments. When she saw us, her expression flickered, surprise, then calculation, then forced warmth. "Deborah, darling, I didn't expect to see you here," Martha said, her tone saccharine. "It's Emma's school." "Mother, where else would I be?" Deborah replied, her voice carefully neutral. Martha turned to me, her eyes freezing over. "And Oliver? How domestic of you to attend." I offered a bland smile. "Wouldn't miss it." The evening proceeded through dinner and awards. When the time came for the recognition of distinguished former faculty, the coordinator introduced Martha with glowing, undeserved praise. Martha stood, soaking in the applause, her smile triumphant, ready for her victory lap. Then the coordinator added, "And we have a special presentation about Principal Fry's legacy. Oliver Coleman has put together a retrospective." Martha's triumphant smile froze. I stood, remote control in hand, and approached the podium. "Thank you for this opportunity," I began. Martha Fry served as principal of Evergreen Elementary for 20 years. Tonight, I'd like to share some reflections on her tenure from students, parents, and faculty who experienced her leadership firsthand. The screen behind me flickered to life. The first image was a school photo from 2008. A young boy with bright eyes and a hesitant smile. This is Marcus Johnson. In 2009, as a second grader struggling with dyslexia, Marcus was publicly called lazy and stupid by Principal Fry in front of his entire class. His mother filed a formal complaint. The district settled quietly. Marcus left Evergreen and struggled academically for years before finding a school that understood his learning differences. He's now a successful software engineer. The next slide showed an email chain. Martha denying a girl's placement in the gifted program. This is from 2012. Principal Fry blocked Julia Chin's advanced placement despite test scores in the 98th percentile. Julia's mother was a single parent working 2 jobs. Principal Fry believed children from broken homes couldn't excel academically. Julia eventually transferred schools, graduated valedictorian, and is now studying at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I moved through slide after slide, each one documenting a child harmed, a parent dismissed, a teacher overruled when they advocated for vulnerable students. The evidence was damning, not isolated incidents, but a pattern of discrimination against children who didn't fit Martha's narrow definition of deserving. The room had gone utterly silent. Martha sat rigid at her table, her face white with horror. These are just 12 examples from Principal Fry's 20-year tenure. I continued. I have documentation of 47 formal and informal complaints spanning disabilities, race, family structure, and socioeconomic status. The common thread. Principal Fry believed that some children were simply better than others, and she used her position to ensure the lesser children knew their place. I clicked to the next slide, Emma's drawing. The one showing our family in bright colors, connected, and the small, dark scribbles representing the Frys, separated in the corner. This is my 7-year old daughter's drawing. She made it after her grandmother, Martha Fry, deliberately ordered a birthday cake with another child's name on it to humiliate her. My daughter drew our family separated from her grandmother's family because, in her words, they're far away where they can't hurt us. The final slide was the compilation video Isaac had created. A carefully edited 2-minute summary of Martha's cruelty toward Emma and Isaac, interspersed with her statements about mediocrity and knowing your place. When the video ended, I turned to face the audience. I'm sharing this not for revenge, but for accountability. The children Martha harmed at Evergreen couldn't defend themselves. They were too young, too vulnerable, too convinced that adults knew best. But they deserved better. I looked directly at Martha, meeting her furious, humiliated gaze. And my children deserved a grandmother who loved them unconditionally, not one who used them as pawns in her own ego games. I'm done being quiet about abuse. The question is, are the rest of you? I returned to my seat. The silence stretched until someone in the back began clapping. It spread slowly, building into sustained applause. Not for me, but in recognition of a truth finally spoken aloud. Martha stood abruptly, Vernon scrambling to follow. She moved toward the exit, her face a mask of pure fury and humiliation. As she passed our table, she leaned in close, her voice a poisonous hiss. You have no idea what you've just done. I know exactly what I've done, I replied calmly. I've shown people who you really are. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Martha left in a storm of righteous indignation. Within hours, the story had spread across the community. The presentation had been recorded by several attendees, and clips began circulating online. The fallout was immediate and severe. Martha's urged her to step down from all committee positions, pending an internal review. The garden club quietly removed her from the membership roster. Invitations dried up. Christy and Les attempted damage control, posting their defenses. But the evidence was too overwhelming. Former students and parents continued sharing their stories, and the narrative shifted from disgruntled son-in-law to a pattern of institutional abuse. The final blow came when the State Education Board announced a review of Martha's conduct during her tenure. The invest of the Haushin was prompted by the volume of complaints that surfaced once people felt safe speaking out. The system was finally being forced to reckon with the bully it had protected for 2 decades. The reckoning had begun. 3 weeks after the fundraiser, Oliver received a registered letter from Martha's attorney, threatening legal action for defamation. Oliver forwarded it to Sam, who laughed, assuring him that truth remained an absolute defense. Instead of backing down, Sam drafted a counter-offer, a legally binding agreement demanding Martha and Vernon cease all contact with the Coleman family, relinquish any claim to grandparent visitation, and make no further attempts to communicate with Emma and Isaac. If they refuse, Sam said, we file for a restraining order and put all your documentation in the public court record. They will never agree to that level of public humiliation. The letter went out. 2 days later, Vernon called. Oliver, we need to talk, man to man. Martha's been stressed. The attention has been difficult. We're willing to compromise. I'm not interested in compromise. Vernon, Oliver replied, his voice devoid of emotion. Your wife systematically abused my children. You enabled it. There is no middle ground here. What if we apologized? Made amends? Oliver thought about the years of calculated cruelty. An apology isn't enough. You don't get to traumatize children for years, and then say sorry, when you face consequences. I want you to sign the agreement my lawyer sent. I want you to leave my family alone. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. Vernon was silent for a moment. You've destroyed her, you know. Her reputation, her standing, everything she built. Was it worth it? She destroyed herself. I just made sure everyone could see it. And yes, protecting my children was worth it. Vernon hung up. 2 days later, the signed agreement arrived. Martha Angry agreed to no contact with Emma and Isaac Coleman. It wasn't an admission of wrongdoing, but it was legally binding protection. Oliver filed it with the court, and the judge, reviewing the evidence, granted a formal no-contact order immediately. That evening, Oliver called a family meeting. He knelt in front of Emma and Isaac. The grown-up stuff is over now. Legally, they can't contact you or come around you anymore. You're safe. Forever? Emma asked, her eyes wide. Forever, sweetheart. Your job is just to be a kid. Let Mom and me handle the grown-up stuff. Isaac asked the question Oliver had anticipated. Did we win? Oliver considered the word. We protected ourselves. That's different than winning. Winning would mean none of this ever happened. But yes, buddy, we're safe now. That's what matters. Later, Deborah turned to him in bed. I'm proud of you. You could have let it go, avoided all this drama. But you chose our children instead. I chose our family, Oliver corrected. You, me, Emma, and Isaac. That's what matters. The consequences for Martha continued to mount. The State Education Board revoked her teaching credentials. A largely symbolic gesture since she was retired, but one that ensured she could never work with children again. The civil lawsuit, filed by former Evergreen parents, citing failure to address Martha's discriminatory practices, was ultimately settled out of court. But it forced the district to implement sweeping reforms. More significantly, the settlement required the district to establish a scholarship fund for students from marginalized backgrounds. Exactly the kind of students Martha had worked hardest to exclude. The fund was named after one of Martha's victims, a young woman who had gone on to become a civil rights attorney. Oliver donated to it anonymously. Martha had used her power to limit children's opportunities. Now, her legacy would be expanding them. In January, Vernon filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Oliver felt no satisfaction. It simply confirmed that the Fry family's loyalty was conditional on maintaining status. When the image crumbled, the family did too. On a cold evening in late January, nearly 4 months after the cake incident, Oliver found Emma drawing at the kitchen table. This time, her picture showed their family plus Grandpa Albert, all holding hands in a circle. No dark scribbles, no separated figures. It's how I feel now, Emma explained. Like we're all connected. Like we're safe. Oliver knelt beside her. We are safe, and we're always going to be connected. That night, as Oliver and Deborah sat together, she told him she was working on writing a letter to her younger self. The version that had accepted her mother's treatment as normal. I want to tell her she deserved better. That it's okay to protect your children, even if it means losing your family of origin. That sounds healthy, Oliver replied. Deborah turned to him. I also wanted to say something to you. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I didn't believe you when you tried to tell me. But you stayed, and you fought, and you protected our children even when I wasn't strong enough to do it myself. That's real love, Oliver. Not the conditional, performative mess I was raised to think was normal. And I need you to know I see it. I see you. Isaac, ever the documentarian, created a final entry in his spreadsheet. Under resolution, he'd written, family protected, pattern exposed, systemic changes implemented. Justice served. It was clinical, factual, and thoroughly Isaac. Emma's 8th birthday came in September, exactly 1 year after the incident. There was no drama, no cruelty, no manipulative grandmother. Instead, there was a homemade chocolate cake with purple frosting, decorated by Emma herself with Oliver's guidance. There was simple, pure, uncomplicated joy. As he watched his daughter laugh, Oliver realized a profound truth of his journey. Martha had tried to diminish his children and poison his marriage. Instead, she had inadvertently forced him to become the protector he was always meant to be. He had chosen truth over comfort, justice over convenience, slept, and had finally taught his children that love was something you proved through action, not words. The moment he had stopped being afraid of the consequences and started being afraid of what would happen if he did nothing was the moment he achieved his true victory. His children were safe, loved, and free to be exactly who they were meant to be.